I helped a lost alien child find his family. His mother's gratitude changed my life. The crying hit me before I even saw him. It was not the kind of crying you hear from a human child. It was a high, thin sound, almost like a wire pulled too tight, cutting just above the noise of the crowd. I was hauling a cargo manifest tablet and moving fast through Gate 7 of Corveth Station when that sound stopped me cold. He was sitting on the floor between a vending machine and a trash unit the size of a small truck. Gray skin, 4 small arms wrapped around his knees, eyes that were too large and too dark, leaking something that was not quite tears, but close enough that it did not matter. He could not have been more than knee-height if he stood up. Around him, hundreds of beings moved in every direction. Not one of them stopped. I had been working on Corveth Station for 2 years. I knew enough to know he was Velhari. I knew the Velhari were one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations in the known galaxy, that they had been traveling between stars when humans were still drawing pictures on cave walls. I also knew that I had never seen a Velhari child alone before. They were always with family. Always. I crouched down. He looked at me, the way you look at something that surprises you so completely that fear has not had time to arrive yet. I did not have words for him. My translation earpiece handled maybe 340 languages, and whatever dialect he was crying in was not among them. So I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled the protein bar from my jacket pocket, broke it in half, and held one piece out to him. He stared at it. He stared at me. I shrugged and ate my half. A hand grabbed my elbow from behind. It belonged to a Drathari merchant named Calix, 6-legged, about chest height, who I recognized from the lower market. His mandibles were clicking fast, which I had learned meant he was alarmed. He told me, in urgent, clipped sentences, that I had potentially just committed what the Galactic Transit Authority classified as a Class 3 social violation. The Velhari did not accept intervention from outsiders during family crisis. If a Velhari child was in distress, and not your family, you did not approach, you did not make eye contact, you did not offer food. The entire cultural architecture of the Velhari was built around emotional privacy, and I had just walked straight through the front wall of it. I looked at Calix. Then I looked at the boy. He had picked up the piece of protein bar and was holding it in 2 of his 4 small hands, examining it carefully. I said, "Too late." Calix made a sound that might have been despair. The boy's name, through broken translation and patient repetition, was Soveth. He was 6 years old in the way that Velhari measured age, which worked out to roughly equivalent. He had been separated from his family at the Interhub transit tram 3 hours before I found him. He did not know what to do. His people did not have a protocol for being alone in public because it was not supposed to happen. I took him to the Galactic Transit Authority desk on level 2. The administrator, a Drathari named Pell with 17 years of station experience, explained to me with the patience of someone who has explained things to confused humans many times, that the regulation required the family to file a formal separation notice before a search could be initiated. This was to protect Velhari cultural autonomy. The family would likely not file that notice immediately, because acknowledging a lost child in public was itself a socially significant act among the Velhari, one that followed specific ceremonial steps. Estimated wait time before an official search could begin, 18 hours. I asked her to repeat that number. She did. I stood there for a moment with Soveth beside me, his upper 2 hands now loosely holding 2 fingers of my left hand, which I had not noticed happening until that moment. I asked if there was any regulation preventing me from walking around the station with the child while he looked for familiar faces or smells. Pell was quiet for a long time. She checked 3 different screens. She consulted a document on a 4th screen. She said, very carefully, that this was not prohibited. We started walking. The station at full operation was unlike anything I had ever experienced before I came to work here, and even now it hit me sometimes. 500 meters across on the central deck alone, atmospheric zones divided by invisible pressure fields, beings who breathed nitrogen, methane, carbon dioxide, all moving through the same corridors, separated by nothing more than a shimmer in the air. The smell changed every 20 steps. The noise was constant and layered, and impossible to fully tune out. Soveth moved differently here than I expected. He was not stumbling or looking around in panic. He was moving slowly and deliberately, his small head tilted slightly, his nostrils, which were set differently than a human nose, doing most of the work. Calix had explained something about Velhari navigation. They left scent markers when they traveled through a space, invisible to every other species. Invisible to me, but to Soveth, the station was covered in a map I could not read. He was following something. I was just keeping up. We passed through the transit market on level 3, a cluster of Keth travelers, tall and heavily built, blocking most of the corridor, parted as we approached. I did not understand why, until Calix, who had decided to follow us at a cautious distance, murmured that Soveth had made a Velhari posture signal. It meant that the human beside him was his designated guardian. The Keth, who respected Velhari's social signals even when they did not fully understand them, had moved out of respect for the child. A 6-year-old alien boy had told a group of beings twice my size that I was his protector. I did not know whether to feel honored or terrified, possibly both. We stopped at a human section vending machine because Soveth had been staring at it for 30 seconds. I showed him how it worked. He pressed the button for something I would not eat on a dare, received a sealed pack of synthetic citrus crackers, turned it over 3 times in his hands, and then held it up to me, as if presenting evidence. I nodded. He put it carefully in one of his 4 inner arm pockets. He asked me something then. The translation came through rough but clear enough. He wanted to know why I had sat down next to him when no one else had. I thought about it honestly. I had spent 9 years as an emergency medical technician in a city that did not always treat its people well. You develop a reflex after enough time doing that work. Something cracked open in a crowded place, your body moves toward it before your brain has finished forming an opinion. You spend enough years running toward the thing everyone else moves away from, and eventually the moving becomes automatic. I told him it was a habit I had never managed to quit. He was quiet for a while after that. Then he said, in the formal translation dialect his earpiece and mine struggled through together, that he did not think habits like that were bad. I agreed with him. We had been walking for nearly 2 hours when it happened. We turned a corridor on the outer edge of the Velhari Cultural Quarter, an area of the station I had never entered, because it was understood to be private. Soveth stopped walking. Every part of him went completely still, the way an animal goes still when it catches a scent it has been searching for. Then he ran. She was standing 40 meters ahead in the entrance to the cultural quarter. Tall, silver-gray skin, 4 arms, dressed in layered cloth that moved slightly even in the still air of the station. She had the same 2 large eyes as Soveth, and they were fixed on the corridor ahead with an expression I could read across any species divide, because it was pure, unfiltered terror about to become something else. She caught him, all 4 arms folded around him at once. She went completely still, not a sound, not a visible breath. Every Velhari in the quarter, and there were dozens of them, stopped what they were doing and looked. Calix appeared at my shoulder. His voice was barely audible. He said I should leave, quietly, immediately. What I had just witnessed was a Velhari reunion, and it was considered deeply sacred, and my presence was a complication that could become a problem. She looked up. She looked directly at me. Calix made a sound I had no translation for. She stood, keeping one set of arms around Soveth, and walked toward me. I did not move. I am not sure I could have. She stopped about a meter away. She was taller than me by a significant amount. Her eyes were fully focused on my face. No translation existed for the words she spoke first. They came through my earpiece as static, and then, slowly, resolved into something I could almost hold on to. She said, "You sat with my child in his worst moment. You did not look away." Then she reached out with her lower right hand and pressed 2 fingers against my wrist, directly over the pulse point. The touch lasted maybe 4 seconds. She stepped back, collected Soveth, and walked into the quarter. The entrance closed behind her. Calix did not speak for a long time. When he did, we were sitting in a small station cafe on level 2, with 2 cups of something warm in front of us, and his voice had the quality of a person choosing each word with unusual care. He explained what had just happened. The touch she had given me was called a Velkrath in the formal Velhari ceremonial language. It was almost never extended to beings outside the Velhari people. The last recorded instance of a Velkrath given to a non-Velhari was 62 years ago, and that had been a diplomatic event involving 3 governments and 2 years of prior negotiation. It was not a gesture of thanks in the way humans understood thanks. It was something older and heavier than that. She had given me a Velhari true name, not a translation of my name, Marcus Delvo, a dock worker from Cincinnati who ate protein bars for dinner 3 nights out of 5. A true name, a Velhari name, spoken in the gesture of the touch, recorded in whatever way the Velhari recorded such things. The name meant, as closely as any translation could carry it, he who did not walk past. And the Velhari ancestral record, Calix told me, was not a digital file or a database that could be deleted or reformatted. It was a living cultural archive maintained across every Velhari world for over 40,000 years. Everyone who received a true name was entered into it. The name would be attached to my description and my deed, and it would be read aloud in Velhari family ceremonies for as long as the Velhari existed. I sat there with my cup going cold, and tried to understand what any of that actually meant. I had stopped because a kid was crying on the floor. I had offered half a protein bar. I had walked around a space station for 2 hours, following a child who could smell a map I could not see. I had not done anything that felt significant in the moment. It had felt obvious. It had felt like the only reasonable thing to do. Calix said quietly that this was exactly the part the Velhari did not understand about humans. In the weeks that followed, nothing dramatic happened. No ceremony, no official announcement, no visit from Velhari diplomats or station administrators. Life on Corveth Station continued at the same pace it always had, which was relentless and loud and occasionally beautiful in the way that only truly strange things can be beautiful. But things shifted, the way the weight of a room shifts when someone you trust walks into it. The entrance to the Velhari cultural quarter, which had been politely but firmly closed to human foot traffic for as long as the station had been running, was no longer closed to me. There was no sign, no official permission. One morning I walked past it on my regular route, and a Velhari elder standing near the entrance looked at me and stepped slightly to the side, and I understood that I was welcome. I kept walking, but I came back later, slower. A Velhari woman named Asha, who ran a small exchange stall near the transit tram, started nodding to me in the mornings, not speaking, just nodding. Among the Velhari, I would eventually learn, that was a form of recognition that carried real weight. Sovith visited me at the cargo dock twice. Both times he arrived without announcement and without explanation. The first time he handed me a small carved stone, smooth and dark, with a pattern worked into it that I could not interpret. The second time, he handed me a dried plant form from a world I would never visit, small and blue and incredibly fragile. He did not explain either of these things. He left after a few minutes both times. I kept them on the shelf above my bunk. One morning, I received a formal message through the station communication system. It was from a Velhari elder whose name, in the best translation my earpiece could manage, came out as something close to Divan. The message was brief. It said, "We have observed your people for 11 years. We did not expect you to be kind. We are revising our expectations." I read it 4 times. I did not know what to write back. I wrote, "We surprise ourselves sometimes too." I got a response 3 days later. 1 word. It translated as, "Good." On a Friday afternoon, 14 weeks after I found Sovith sitting on the floor at Gate 7, I was on my break and I walked back to that same spot. Same vending machine, same trash unit the size of a small truck. I sat down on the floor with my back against the wall, and I watched the crowd move through. I noticed something I had not noticed before, or maybe I had never looked for it. Among the thousands of beings moving through that corridor, there were small moments everywhere. A Goran maintenance worker, enormous and copper-smelling, stopping to help an elderly being untangle her luggage cart from a railing. A human teenager no older than 19, wearing a station intern badge, patiently walking a Keth visitor through a touchscreen interface, trying every possible approach until one worked. A Drathari child offering a piece of food to a smaller being of a species I did not recognize, both of them sitting on a bench, figuring it out. Small things, unreported things, things that did not change the official record of interspecies relations or show up in the GTA diplomatic briefings, but they were everywhere, once you knew to look. I thought about what Devon had written. We did not expect you to be kind. And I thought about what that actually said, not about humans specifically, about everyone, about any species from anywhere. The expectation, the default assumption built from thousands of years of galactic history, was that beings passed each other by, that the default was distance, that kindness required an explanation, required a reason, required a cultural framework and a diplomatic agreement, and a procedural approval form filed in triplicate. And sometimes, without any of that, a person just stopped because a kid was crying. That was the thing, not the faster-than-light drive we had stumbled into, not the wars we had fought or the treaties we had signed, or the cargo routes we were slowly learning to navigate. The thing that had put my name in a 40,000-year archive was a protein bar and 2 hours of walking. I pulled my jacket a little tighter and stayed sitting on the floor. The crowd moved around me, nitrogen breathers and methane breathers, and beings who consumed energy in forms I would never fully understand, all of them flowing through Gate 7, with somewhere to be, something to carry, someone waiting. I kept watching. A small sound cut through the noise somewhere to my left, high and thin and tight, not quite crying in any language I knew, but close enough. I was already standing. I was already moving. Some habits, once built, do not ask permission. They do not wait for you to decide. They do not check whether you have the right form filed, or the cultural briefing memorized, or whether the situation fits cleanly into any protocol anyone has ever written down. They just move you toward the thing that needs you. Somewhere in a record that would outlast every city on Earth, my name sat beside a description of an afternoon when I did not walk past. And maybe that was all any name really needed next to it. Not a rank, not a title, not a record of battles or discoveries or decisions made in rooms with important furniture. Just, he stopped. He sat down. He broke something small in half and shared it. I do not know what the universe expects of us. I do not know what the Velhari expected, or the Drathari, or any of the hundreds of species learning to exist alongside a young, loud, improbable species that had arrived among them through what every physicist in the galaxy called statistically insulting luck. But I know what I found on the floor of Gate 7, and I know it was worth stopping for.